Scott Fisher with Senior Resource Connectors. Senior Resource Connectors is here as a resource for you. If you are finding yourself in the 45 to 65-year-old crowd, and you are walking the walk with someone you love who is experiencing some of the challenges of aging, we are here for you. There's 45 companies pulled together to provide guidance, resources, outreach, education, because the journey is challenging, and especially if you're still working and you might even have kids at home or in college, it gets to be overwhelming. And so today I want to carry on a conversation. We had one a while back, and now we're back at it again with my good friend Jason May, the Arizona law doctor. Jason, welcome. Glad to have you back again, and look forward to our conversation here today.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I don't hope you don't mind. I've got the cool headset on today. A lot going on. The reason we're putting this series together, if this is the first one you've maybe jumped in and visited with us on, the Senior Resource Connectors was formed as a coalition of businesses who have pooled our collective resources so that we could create an avenue, a narrative out to the adult kids. I've been in business for over 20 years, helping families find and select the right senior living. That's my number one company. It's the Options for Senior Living business. We've been around a long time. I have a team that helps me work with literally thousands of families. However, most of the clients that we've worked with over the last 20 years are not the seniors, Jason. They're the adult kids. And some crisis, some reason has thrust them into a decision-making role. And sometimes there were crises that were probably preventable. And so that's what we're here for, is to help families before the crisis, before um, all heck breaks loose in their life. And so, as an attorney, you have got to see so much come down the road where families are in front of you and they're in crisis. And some of this probably could have been prevented with some guidance and some intervention ahead of time.
Yeah, actually, I would say almost every single matter that I run into could have been prevented.
Really?
Yeah, and I get calls daily, sometimes multiple times a day that I get a call from somebody. Hi, I'm my wife. Well, we weren't officially married. We've been together for 20 years. It's all our stuff. Well, she passed away, and her sister's coming in and saying I need to leave my house, and Jason, help. And well, the house was in the deceased wife's name, and
Hmm.
even though that they've been together for over 20 years, legally speaking, they are not married.
Mm.
And some people even talk about, oh, well, common law marriage. And common law marriage exists, but not in Arizona. And that's when I get that. I've gotten that probably at least a dozen times over the years.
Oh my gosh.
Other ones are the blended family situation,
Mm.
where mom and husband, or mom and dad, they might have one child that they just communally like, which was the wife's child. Everything's going to you, honey. You've been the best. You've taken care of us. You've done all these great things. But they don't write anything down. Mom dies. And
Mm.
then stepdad says, don't worry, honey. It's all going to you. But he never comes and sees someone like myself.
Hmm.
And then I finally get a phone call from the stepdaughter saying, my stepdad died, and the wayward son from Florida basically is coming in, taking all the stuff that which was my mom's stuff, and saying it's all his.
Hmm.
And since stepdad didn't get the proper paperwork done, she legally is nothing. And I have to then have that hard conversation that I'm not going to be able to help.
Yeah. And
So
for someone that wants to help fix, resolve, that's a frustrating place to be, that you can't do what you could do, but you didn't have the tools or they didn't come see you in the right time.
Yep.
Um, I just to the last, and this is one of the motives to the connectors business that happened for us a couple of years ago. This is a family story. My wife's favorite uncle was the youngest of seven kids. My wife's mom is like number three in that line, while Uncle Danny was number seven, and he had not been feeling well, and had been diagnosed with like COPD, and he was having a hard time breathing. And he lived up in the Verde Valley, so he lived a little bit at altitude. So sometimes, the thinner air at altitude makes it a little more challenging. Well, my wife's cousin reached out to her and said, "Dad's really sick. We got to go up and see him." He was, um, now they're talking about cancer. Well, he had been misdiagnosed, and instead of COPD, he's now got stage 4 metastasized lung cancer, that his brain and his liver are completely sick with the cancer. Literally in less than 4 weeks was gone.
Yeah.
And his response when we started asking him about his estate, right, those documents, um, he's like, "Why do I need all that? I just have my one heir, my daughter."
Yep.
And we were like, "Oh no." So here we were at the 11th hour running around getting powers of attorney signed because the doctors wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't
Yep.
give us vital information. I needed to go in and speak to the oncologist on his behalf with my medical background to help him. We had to go to the bank and get my cousin on the at least the access to his checking account without all the other stuff being retitled. And he had no will. And he had no will.
All too common.
Yeah, yeah, and
All too common.
um, it when we feel like these things happen to us or it's personal, it drives us to be more helpful to others or to create that outreach. And I think, your personal experience, my wife Stacy's personal experience, that drives us to be that trusted resource for families.
Yeah. And how I've kind of looked at my position is I try and educate.
Hmm.
Once I educate, all right, you're an adult. You
Yeah,
can make your decisions.
yeah.
But it breaks my heart to hear people call me and Jason, that this is happening. This is
Hmm.
not what my mom, my uncle, my
Hmm.
brother, my sister, my cousin wanted.
Hmm.
What can we do? And a lot of times the answer is we can't do much,
Mm.
or it's going to be instead of 100% of what they wanted done, we might be able to salvage 10% or 20%.
Mm.
And oh, yeah, by the way, it's going to cost a lot of time, money, frustration, stress, all those things that it could have been prevented if I would have seen, or someone like myself
Right,
would have seen that loved one when things were good.
right, right. Who's the ideal person that you want to be talking to? At what point in the journey? Somebody's age.
Uh,
Who's
Basically,
your?
the
Yeah,
ideal person is you, Scott.
yeah.
And really, it's not really an age thing. It's because we've if you live long enough, you end up finding that there are people that you might have known in your life that
Mm.
in their 20s they're not with us anymore, or they get in this goofy little accident and now they have the mentality of a 12-year-old,
Mm.
or they're 50, or even just recently there's been a lot of our like celebrities and idols that
Right.
they're not with us anymore, or they're not themselves anymore. And every single one of them, if you could be 99 years old and if you still are good up here and we should talk. If you are 18 years old and you're still, we should talk.
Right.
And now that doesn't mean that you have the same plan or the same paperwork, but we should at least talk.
Isn't it shocking that after Prince died and even after Aretha Franklin died, how much was left undone? And I mean, you're talking about mega stars.
Peter Falk,
Presume.
Columbo.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was issues between his ex-wife, his current wife, and his kids, and it went through, he wasn't dead. It went through litigation for over a decade. Well, poor Peter Falk, who might have had in his head, oh, my kids are going to take care of me, or my ex-wife's,
Mhm.
every single one of those goals was in the trash can, and it's whatever the court decided sometime after that.
Right.
And it took years.
Yeah.
And that was Peter Falk was still alive.
Yeah. Hey, tell me a little bit too, or share your insights to the Arizona mental health power that most people don't know. If you had your paperwork or your work done in another state, you don't have one of these. I can promise you, you don't have one. Would you talk about that? I think that's a vital um, imperative that we've got to share with people.
Absolutely. And this is what happens, Scott, and you hit it right on the head. There's people that come from other states, and it's like, well, I don't have that. Well, that's because that state doesn't have a separate distinction between healthcare,
Hmm.
power of attorney, and mental health care.
Hmm.
Healthcare is where I'm unconscious or I need a surgery done, and I'm putting somebody in charge of should the surgery be done or not.
Hmm.
That's the healthcare power of attorney. Mental health care is now where, on the older side, that's your Alzheimer's, dementia that people think about. But then on the younger side, bipolar, schizophrenia, there's certain addictions that people have, whether it's their kids or like I had a client where she called me up one day and she's like, my son suffers from, he has a psychotic episode from marijuana abuse.
Mm.
And well, if he's in the psychotic episode, we can't do anything except to go to court. So then we would have to wait until he's out of the psychotic episode. Well, he could be doing all kinds of dangerous things during
Right.
that time to himself, harming him and his family. When if she would have a mental health care power of attorney, which we eventually got
Yeah.
taken care of, she would have been able to take care of him when he couldn't take care of himself.
Wow. A couple of my clients come to mind. I'll tell you a quick story. Um, the kids, the adult kids, and there was the oldest one was the son, had been on mom and dad to get their powers redone. They lacked mental health powers in their estate plan. They'd come from another state and all this kind of thing. They'd been putting it off for a while. The kids were pressing, and they were actually engaged with another attorney in town that you and I both know. Um, However, dad had what we would call is generalized dementia, probably an Alzheimer's type, because he was getting revved up in the afternoon. Um, and we call that sundowning syndrome. And so 3:30, 4 o'clock every afternoon, dad was moving and he was in his mind going to work. Hey, I got to go to work. And the wife is, and he's significantly taller than her. And she's on her walker and he's on his, and he's trying to get out the door, and he's in his revved up, mm, not himself state of mind. They get into a tussle. He goes down on top of her and fractures her hip.
Oh,
He goes into a delirium state, which often happens when there's been a fall or a sudden, you know, occurrence like that. They lay on the ground 2 days.
oh,
Um, by the time they get in there, the first responders get in there, he's in a completely dehydrated, um, delirium, which is psychotic and agitated and all of that, and he has to go to the psych hospital. Mom is now having to be sedated because she's got a crushed pelvis and hip, has to have surgery, and the kids have no authority to do anything, particularly the mental health authority, to put dad in a level 1 behavioral health acute care facility. So
yep.
guess what they now had to do for dad? Go
Got
to
to go to
guardianship.
court.
They got to go to court.
Yep.
And it was devastating and expensive. And the parents were being delaying, and the kids were letting the parents kind of have their room. But this cauldron was boiling over to the point where it did boil over. And then and we ultimately had to place dad in a memory care facility. Mom had a long recovery after her fractures and things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you just go, one piece of paper would have done all this ahead
Yep.
of time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it breaks my heart when I get those phone calls. I actually had one. It, he's a doctor. His wife was also in the medical field, and during COVID, she started having this weird situation that her psychologist brother figured, oh, maybe this is just work stress. So they said, you know what, retire, sister. And but it didn't get any better.
Hmm.
And she's not at retirement age. And she ended up developing a rapidly deteriorating type of dementia.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening? They didn't have any paperwork. That's something that you do when you're older, when you're
Right.
getting towards that back end of things.
Yeah.
Well, we had to go to court to get guardian conservatorship over her.
Hmm.
In addition to that, what's happened now is if you've known people who've had to go to court, we'll call it 5, 10 years ago,
Hmm.
it was a lot easier back then. Now, due to things like, in my opinion, like the Britney Spears
Yep.
case, where kind of people in the courts and whatever in California kind of did wacky things, that now places like Arizona make it to where my client, doctor, husband, only one wife, married for 40 some years. All the kids were on board. Her family was on, everybody was in favor. And we had to go through 3 hearings. It was not a slam dunk. And
Crazy.
if I would have talked to her a year and a half before when she still had her faculties,
Hmm.
it would have been one document,
Hmm.
nominal cost, and
Hmm.
wouldn't have had to go through all of the hell that they ended up going through.
Yeah.
And that should have been a slam dunk case. And yet 3 hearings, and the stress on people, for like the stress on his wife,
Hmm.
it was difficult because she still thinks she's working at the hospital right now.
Right. Right. Um, the state of Arizona, let me just point something out. The state of Arizona has made a provision. The Attorney General's office has placed on its website some, what do you want to say, templates and usable executable documents for the mental health and the medical powers of attorney. Um, and attorneys like you would say, hey, that's, I mean, in an emergency, that's there. Come
Mm-hmm.
see me, because everybody should have a unique document, with your own personal. But there is a free solution to people, right? That's on now. It does not include the financial powers.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't include financial, but at least the healthcare,
Yeah.
mental health care, if all you have is a quick moment or the finances aren't there, that's still better than nothing.
It's so better than nothing. And so we were forced to go that route with Uncle Danny. I mean, I'm like, I could print those and take those over and at least get Marisa, my cousin, Stacy's cousin, the access, the healthcare, um, information that she needed to provide. And goodness, if he would have gotten delirious or whatever, and we needed mental health intervention, we would have had that opportunity. www.azag.gov, and the Attorney General, Mays, has a long, um, packet of life planning stuff to look into. It's not as good as seeing an attorney, but if you're in a pinch or you need something, that's certainly a resource for people. Before we get out of here, I want to just, um, touch on one more thing, and I guess that's it, and we'll just kind of wrap from there. But, um, there's got to be times it works out right, right? Somebody came to you and then things are complicated and it worked out well. So let's end on maybe a good story, something that you think about, a family did the right planning. Maybe it was a blended family, and then everybody, knew exactly what was happening in that time that it needed to happen.
Yeah, actually, one of the best stories that I have is not even one that was my client. It,
Okay.
it actually was my wife's grandparents. And they were at a place in life where they were perfectly fine.
Mm,
And but then they decided, you know what, we kind of see the future. We've seen our friends, and they sold their house, cleaned everything up, moved to a long-term care facility, They got all their paperwork all taken care of. They had everything, all their ducks in a row. And then as time went along, we still would go and visit with them. We could
Mhm.
still stay at their place. But then as grandpa's health declined and he ended up getting a back injury, and grandma ended up developing Alzheimer's and eventually dementia, it ended up being this smooth process to
Mm.
where when they did end up needing help, all the paperwork was there. There was almost no stress with the family.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what they needed to do and they had the
Yeah.
ability to do it. And then when they finally passed away a few years ago, it was a smooth, quick process and transition. The longest part sometimes was getting the death certificate and getting the bank to, send the letters back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But smooth
Yeah.
versus chaos.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I appreciate that a lot because it's not always just the doom and gloom stories that we deal with all the time. Um, well, I really I'm grateful for you and your contributions to our group and the work you do in the community. Um, if you're watching this, and this is what I'm thinking about is, and maybe you've been through this with a loved one, your parents, grandparents, and it's been challenging or you've had issues. um, I always think about it as the point of view from I'm a dad myself. I want to make sure my kids don't ever go through some of the stuff I went through. So if you have not done your own planning, Jason said it's us. We're the ideal guy that should be making an appointment and coming in and getting our legal work done and make sure that our loved ones are loved well. And we do that by planning. So thank you for taking so much time with us today and sharing all your insights. I think this has been a really fruitful conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Well, this is Scott again with Senior Resource Connectors. Jason's contact information will be added here to the screen, so you'll be able to get and you can always call our office as well and get connected to him through us. He is the Arizona Law Doctor, and Jason May. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Scott.
You guys take care. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.